Today's episode is about two friends who decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro together. Katherine and Ellen signed up for the Western approach with Thomson Treks, but they came into the training process from very different places. Katherine is 66 and has a long background in endurance sports, triathlons, open water swimming, cycling, and running. Ellen is 55 and active as well, but her fitness background leaned more towards Pilates, barre, hiking, and strength training. Both of them also live in the Flatlands of the Southeastern United States, Wilmington and Charleston. So preparing for a 19,000-foot mountain required some creativity. What makes Ellen's story interesting is that this wasn't her first experience at altitude. Back in October of 1995, she did a 15-day trek in Nepal and reached about 15,500 feet. The difference is she was in her 20s at the time, and she didn't train at all. This time was very different. Today, we're going to talk about how the idea for Kilimanjaro started, what training actually looked like, and what happens when two friends commit to preparing for one of the world's most famous mountains. So, Katherine and Ellen, welcome to the Hike Strong podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Honestly, climbing the mountain was worth it just to be on your podcast.
Okay, everybody hear that? That is the most flattering comment in 36 episodes, so I'll take it. You get the award for most flattering comment. Thank you.
100% genuine.
Okay, well, I loved working with you guys. It was really fun. Two different people, so different in our approaches, and the notes reflect that. When I looked back to figure out what kind of questions to ask, totally different. And it was a lot of fun. And I bet, and maybe we'll uncover this, but during the episode, maybe that will be revealed, kind of the contrast of the two of you and why you guys are probably really good friends. So we're just going to jump right in. So whose idea was it to go to Kilimanjaro?
Catherine's.
All right, Katherine, why Kilimanjaro?
I had been enamored by the image of Kilimanjaro most of my life. My father traveled to East Africa for work and volunteer work. And so I've heard about that part of the country. Honestly, I never really thought about hiking the mountain. I just really wanted to see it. But again, getting to know Ellen, some of the things that she'd done, the idea became more crystallized. And I just happened to mention it to Ellen one time, and she said yes without hesitation. And so that's how it was born. Is that right, Ellen? Close?
Yes. That's accurate.
Okay. I decided to be honest today.
Yeah, we're going to draw, we'll draw the honesty out, believe me. All right, so go back a second. How did you guys meet each other? Just real quick on that.
Catherine and I we are in a natural women's nonprofit. And we met maybe 10 years ago. We were both involved in this nonprofit. And then Katherine became president of the board of this amazing nonprofit in 2020 and asked me to be her vice president. And I agreed. So we've gotten closer friends in that time.
So I find it interesting, in just 10 years, you guys are close enough to travel to Kilimanjaro together. That's a really good...
The interesting part, Marcus, is we're still that close after the trek.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that a little bit. Like, if you guys can travel together, that says a lot about the friendship there.
Previous to when we first started talking about it, I think we were on a trip that I had planned, which was to Paris. We went to the French Open. So kind of a different vibe than climbing Kilimanjaro. So I feel like, Katherine, I want to plan our next trip. We can take turns. Something a little bit more like Paris.
All right, quick detour about tennis. So what two players on the male side and on the female side were you most excited about seeing?
I mean,
if you can remember.
But he wasn't playing, was it? I was excited to see Alcaraz and Sinner.
Okay.
And then we saw Iga Svitek. And who else did we see, Catherine? I can't remember.
We saw Osaka play that fabulous match, maybe,
Amazing.
during her comeback. You're right, right. So it was interesting. Ellen is this huge Nadal fan, and we had hoped to see him, but he went out in the first round the day before we got there. So we thought it would be, not as exciting, but it ended up being just a fabulous. The tennis there is amazing. You're close to the court. The energy is infectious. So it was great.
Okay. All right. That was a quick detour. So then, I guess a note, I think Osaka is not playing anymore, 1, and 2. Nadal was my favorite, and then Djokovic leapfrogged, but I still love them both. Both great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Back to trekking here. So when did it go from like a fun idea, let's go to Kili, this will be great, to something you were actually committed to doing?
I think probably, so the French Open was 2 years ago, May, and I think we got serious about Kili probably a year ago. Catherine had at least one friend who had traveled with Thomson Treks, and I looked into another company but didn't hear back. And Catherine had heard so many good things about Thomson, and the more we researched that company, the better we felt about travel with them and the safer. And I love their commitment to supporting their porters. I can't remember the acronym of the organization. It sounds like K-pop or something, but I love that they're so committed to making sure their porters are cared for, and just really support them along the way.
And Marcus, I just have to add a little PS. Her everything she said is 100% accurate. But we started talking about this on our next trip together, which was in Egypt. So Ellen and I both enjoyed traveling and seeing new places. Ellen's a much more experienced traveler than I am, but we don't live in the same town, so our conversations may be sporadic, except for when we're traveling together. So we were together for a week or 10 days, and that's when I think it crystallized for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before training even started, what were you guys most excited about? See, that's when it was. See, that's it's like in chapters, right? Oh, yay. Let's go to Kilimanjaro. This is be great. Then it becomes real and you're like, wow, we need to train for this, right? And then the training starts. So, so even prior to the training, what were you most excited about?
Yeah, I think, Marcus, I think I was most excited about doing something different, totally out of my comfort zone. I'd never done anything close to this. I'm not an experienced hiker. I had spent the night in a tent maybe twice in my adult life. So this just sounded like something appealing. And as you learned, I like to get out of my comfort zone and try new things. And that's what I think I was most excited about. I didn't know what it was, but I was just trying something different.
What I was most excited about, I think I would echo what Catherine said just about being outside of my comfort zone, although I am not used to pushing myself outside of my comfort zone in terms of physical challenges. Like, give me an intellectual challenge, ask me to learn a new language, no problem. A physical challenge, that definitely gives me pause. But I like a challenge. I was excited to challenge myself this way, and I like adventure, and I like traveling with Catherine. So I was excited about all of that.
All right, and Catherine, what were you most nervous about?
Well, depends on when though you're asking about those nerves, because the nerves change throughout this process. I think when the nerves really hit me was right before we started working together, because you and I had a couple of conversations, and our last conversation before I really committed to your training program was, you were saying, well, tell me what you're doing. And I said, oh, I just had this great hike this past weekend, 3 hours out in the woods. And you said, what was the terrain? I said, oh, it's rolling. And then you said, what was the elevation? I said, I have no idea. So we looked it up, and it was like 100 feet. And your jaw dropped. And I think it was at that point that I realized I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I need to just seriously commit to your training program, not just general training.
All right. So when the training started, what surprised you the most, Katherine?
How much I enjoyed it. And how, no, Ellen did. You enjoyed it. We just have different definitions. How much I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time with Ellen talking about this, doing our hikes together. And I really learned to enjoy watching my fitness improve, because I didn't think I could see it as clearly as I did. And in your training program, it's right there. It's the numbers, what's happening. And so those were, I guess, some of enjoyments that I can think of right now.
Ellen, anything surprised you the most about the training once it started?
Yeah, I think how much math I had to do. And I know we've talked about this morning. That's why you're laughing. I'm like, wasn't felt there was going to be math involved in this hike. It really, I think I'm so glad that you and I had a few weeks together of sort of base training before I hit peak, because it gave me the opportunity. There was a learning curve for me, because once I learned that I was best served by looking at the week, kind of, Sunday or Monday, and planning the week out and doing the calculations of, okay, if I do this many rounds of steps, it's this much elevation gain. And in order to hit my goals for every week, I really had to map it out more than I realized. So I think that really surprised me.
I do recall, I think in my notes, it was about week 4 is when you actually said, it's finally coming together.
Yeah, there was some magical thinking on my part, because I really liked my routines that I had before the training. So as you mentioned in the introduction, I love Pilates. I go to barre classes, and that's one of the ways I'm kind of in community with other people. I live by myself. So I really wanted to stick with that. And then once I realized what kind of commitment the training and the hike required to be prepared, to feel confident, I realized, okay, those other things that I normally do are going to have to wait, and I really need to fully commit to training.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I was glad I started a little bit later because I saw Ellen, but I was also quite stubborn in thinking that I could continue my current routines and training like Ellen and I both had our routines. And I thought I'll just add this in. And you really needed to firmly commit to this to see the results of the training that you've put together.
I think what's unique about you guys is you did have a solid structured training prior to this. It's not uncommon for somebody to come into the training and kind of be all over the board, and then this becomes the structure. And so for them, and there's no sacrifices. This is great for them because now they have the structure they were looking for, number one. And number two, sometimes it's just maybe one thing that they enjoy doing. It's easy enough to fit it in. But yeah, you guys did do a lot, particularly Katherine. Maybe this is a good time to talk about your open water swimming. That's fantastic. Every week I looked at the notes and you're doing open water swimming. Tell us what the heck you were doing. Like, I don't know. I don't know anyone who does that. I never have. So maybe this is the only time the listeners will, kind of meet somebody who does this. So just talk about it real quick.
Well, you mentioned in the very beginning, Ellen and I live at the coast. So for me, it's a natural activity. I love the beach. I love the water, the ocean, and the sounds. And I've never really been a serious swimmer until in the last 10 years, I started to swim for fitness, not just to go out and enjoy an afternoon. And I fell in love with it. It was wonderful to help me with my body when I was having difficulty with knees and other kind of aging ailments, I should say, and overuse ailments. So the swimming was great counteraction to that. I find it really meditative. And I think the community that I have, that I swim with, I love those people, and I would not know them except for swimming. So we live in a place where it's you can swim all year round. I mean, you have to wear wetsuits and you have to wear things for winter weather, but you can swim year round, and you acclimate. Like, you acclimate to altitude, you acclimate to water temperature and conditions. So you just you train yourself that way. But it's wonderful. I highly suggest anybody that lives near any type of water, even if it's a lake, and you live near a lake, Marcus, I know Atlanta has some big lakes, try it.
And so what's kind of the average, remind me it's in the notes, but your average either distance or length of time that you would swim?
Yeah, for me, it's length of time because the conditions change so dramatically. Tides, winds, that type of thing. So I like to get in. I always like to have an hour as a goal for any kind of training exercise that I do, because I think that's when you start seeing the benefit. But for swimming in the wintertime, it's harder to get an hour in because it is so cold. So I would say 45 minutes might have been the max in the wintertime, depending on, the temperatures and the conditions. And distances just range all over the map in that time period.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Ellen, was there a moment during training when you suddenly thought, this is actually working?
Many moments. I think particularly with the harder days, like the milestone challenges, where, I was obviously working on my strength, but also my stamina, and the fact that I was working out for, several hours, a few different exercises, and that I didn't just collapse at the end. That, and then I think our the training hikes that Katherine and I did together, we did 3 over about 3 months. They were so helpful for so many reasons, just to be out in the mountains hiking, to be together, to support each other that way, and to use some of the things that you had helped us with and taught us, and working on balance, working on strength, all the lunges, like everything kind of came into play on those training hikes. So I think I had a lot of those moments.
Okay. Katherine, any thoughts on that?
The one that sticks in my mind right now was the last milestone challenge, because it was, I was able to complete it in less time than I had in the previous milestone challenge, but doing more than 1,000 feet more of elevation. And I not only completed it in less time, I felt better afterwards. I was ready to go do something else after the milestone, get on the bike, go swim, something. So I knew then that what you had us doing was working. And my heart rate, that was the other thing I've been meaning to tell you. I noticed it became harder and harder for me to get my heart rate up on certain activities. So I knew that my fitness was improving.
What was the toughest week of training?
Our actual hikes when we went out, because Ellen and I are not experienced hikers. It was so new. The effort was not just physical, it was mental for us. It was the planning. It was understanding the trails when the trails weren't well marked, not being sure of your footing and the terrain. And it was so much mental work that I really was not prepared for. Thank goodness Ellen is there, who has the bigger brain, so she can lead us through all of those hikes. And we just learned so much. Don't start too late. Be sure you have all the things you need, like a headlamp, even if you think you're going to be just in the daylight. Be prepared with snack. I mean, just everything. It was helpful to put it all together. So I think those were the hardest things for me, again, because they were new. I had never done them before.
I echo Katherine. I think that last hike that we did, I think it was January 2nd, and it was, we started in the dark and finished in the dark. And I think according to all trails, this particular trail should take about 8 or 9 hours. And I think it took us 11-ish. And the toughest part was the last 2 or 3 miles, which was all downhill. I think it was like a 40% grade, and it was over leaves. And we were basically skiing. I mean, I fell several times, but skiing down, grabbing onto the trunks of rhododendron trees on the way down, and kind of skiing on the leaves. And it was so hard at the time. I didn't want to be in the woods after dark I was making all sorts of noise to scare away the animals. I'm sure the animals were like, girl, we smell you. Like, we're not coming anywhere near you. And yet that experience was so helpful on the trek, because on the summit day, the descent was along, some of it was on scree, and this it was like you were skiing on dirt and rocks. So because we had that experience, I was like, oh, I know, I just have to kind of lean into it and I'll be okay. And also on the descent, it helped that I had a couple of porters helping me like down on the way so that I wouldn't wipe out. So, but yeah, I think that something that was so hard ended up being really helpful on the trek.
I know there was a point where you started to feel burnt out during the process. Just talk about it however you want. Maybe leading into it, at the time when it was, when you really felt it the most, and kind of at what point you pulled out of it, because we had some strategies. Maybe it wasn't until you departed. Just talk about it overall, because it's not uncommon.
Yeah. I mean, one of my questions is, am I allowed to swear on the podcast? Which maybe
that's up to you.
Yeah. No, honestly, Marcus, you were such a help. I can't even remember when that was, but I think I just had fatigue. And because I had started training, again, the base phase in October, like beginning of October, and even though it took me a few weeks to kind of catch on to what I had to do, maybe it was in November or early December, and I just was really fatigued kind of the repetition. And I think too, I was probably, I said earlier, I really like the fitness classes I go to because of that community. And I was feeling isolated and just feeling, I certainly was seeing results, but I just think I was feeling frustrated and isolated.
Yeah, I remember that. And we had some strategies to pull out of it. It wasn't perfect, but obviously you were able to stay in the game enough to kind of get through the end. We modified, I think, maybe I think the last milestone challenge, we might have dropped it a little bit. You were ready to go at that time. I knew you were physically ready. And so I think that helped a little bit.
I think so. I mean, you really, talking to you, you were such a great listener, and you assured me that everything was okay, that this was normal, that I was going to be okay, that I was well prepared. I think we also pulled back on that last milestone challenge as well, because I was having some knee pain. I think the last two hikes, the hike that Katherine and I did in December and January, I think those descents, I started to have some knee pain in my right knee and didn't want to overtrain, didn't want to push it. My knee was swollen after those two hikes, and I'm happy to report I didn't have any pain on the trek. So your training, your guidance, and then your wisdom on helping me kind of pull back and knowing and reassurance that I was ready totally helped.
Yep, I totally remember pivoting there too and thinking, all right, in my notes, I think it was it might have been 4, maybe 5 weeks where we were talking about knee issues, and we had to be very strategic. And I think towards the end, we did activities where you were just ascending. We kind of stopped with the process of preparing you for descent.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was your fitness was going to carry over to your trek. And what we needed to do is just keep your level of fitness without aggravating anything and increasing the inflammation. And apparently it was successful. Now, Katherine, on the other hand, in my notes, and we'll probably get to it specifically, but she was really frustrated during the taper process because she wasn't supposed to do much. You never seemed burnt out at all. You were like,
yeah, I think for me, not only is it the routine, but it's good for my mental health, the physical fitness. It's a good release for me. Yes, there's the community part of it, but it is a way I clear my brain. And when I may have a lot of stress in other parts of my life or work life particularly, it's the best release. And so I look forward to not only to your training, but really most all of the training that I do.
Did you guys ever compare notes, have to motivate each other when one of you was struggling? Or was there a similar dynamic? Maybe not that exactly.
I mean, we communicated a lot, especially when we were together on the hikes, and it was reassuring. We had some of the same doubts in terms of training. No, and I think we both have our routines. And I knew that Katherine was going to be great because she does, as you mentioned, endurance sports. But even in terms of when we did the training hikes together, some of the stretches were tough, and we would say to each other, like, I'm kind of questioning my choice to go to Kilimanjaro. Is this the right choice? And thankfully, we didn't have that thought at the same time. But we would share, like, I thought the same thing. I was wondering the same thing. So doing this together made all the difference. I can't imagine having this experience without both of you, without Katherine and without Marcus's help training.
And Marcus, I'd like to add to that because she's exactly right. Our periods of weakness, particularly during the training hikes, tended to be different periods. So we really were supportive of each other. And we also have a real sense of humor. Both of us do. So when I was struggling or stuck somewhere in the middle of a river, Ellen would laugh at me so I wouldn't get so frustrated at the condition that I was in. And I'll think maybe I was a good balance for Ellen in that she's a true perfectionist. You give her a goal, she's going to meet that goal and exceed it. There's nothing but A+ for Ellen, where I'm like, it's fun just being out here and part of the journey, and good is good enough. So I think that was, we had a good balance for each other that way.
Definitely.
Okay, let's do a little departure. I was going to do this later in the conversation, but let's do it now. So we're going to do a recap. We're going to recap the summary data in your training plans. You've heard me do this on some of the podcasts.
I love it.
Okay. So Katherine, the top 3 activities you did to achieve your weekly elevation gain, you did the most was treadmill, and then step ups, and then stairs. And then for Ellen, you were also treadmill, but then stair climber for you, and then hikes and walks was the third. FYI. In the final week, your distance and elevation gain weekly averages. So this is kind of prior to the taper week. So Katherine, your average was 24 miles. Ellen, you were 16 miles. Elevation gain average, Katherine, 4,900. Ellen, 4,600. Record distance in a week, Katherine had a monster 36 miles.
Wow, that's amazing.
I don't know what week that was. Anyway,
that was week
ahead.
7.
Okay.
Week 7. That might have been, I don't know. Maybe that was where your 15-mile hike was, and then everything else you did on top of it. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah.
Which meant Ellen, listen, because I said, Ellen, don't do a lot during that week. So actually, no, that's not true. That's not true. Ellen, week 8 was your record. So that was 22 miles. Okay. And then record elevation gain in a week. Katherine, week 3 for you, it was 5,860.
Nice.
Ellen, for you, it was in week 6, and it was 5,345.
Great.
And then the record elevation gain in one single event. So for Katherine, and I think it was, look, your weeks were staggered by.
They were.
It was by 1 week. So this could actually be the same week. So it was week 10 for Katherine. No. No. And the reason why I thought it might be the same was because due to the hikes, right? Because during those weeks, that could have been the record, but no. So Katherine, in week 10, it was week 10 for you. You did 4,430 feet. And that was a combination of 2,560 on treadmill and 1,870 on step-ups, which is just insane.
That's ridiculous.
1,870 on step-ups. That, I think, is the record. I honestly think that no one's done that before. That's because, like in swimming, you just put your head down and you go, I think step ups, maybe it was the same mentality.
Or also, I had fewer options, as you know. So I really didn't have the choice of a stair climber. So it was the choices I had.
Yeah, and it is unusual that, and again, you might be the only person that for the second most activity that contributed to elevation gain, for you it was step ups. I don't think up to that point anybody had to do that. So that was interesting. And then Ellen, for you it was week 11 where you did 4,050 feet of elevation gain. So that was 2,000 feet on treadmill, 1,450 on the stair climber, and 600 on step ups.
Again, our weeks were staggered. That was our last milestone challenge for each of us. This is what that sounds like to me.
Yeah.
So that's why we had those big gains then, because you required us to do 4,000 in one block. So that's why they were bigger, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about step ups later. I've now kind of added it in my routine. I've enjoyed it, and it's nice. It's bad weather, and you can't go outside and walk or run or bike. So I learned to like those. I did not start out liking those at all.
Do you hop on Spotify or something and get a playlist with a certain BPM?
Yes, and I tried the different music kind of avenues, and I ended up liking Amazon Music the best for the step ups because it had a better 120 beat per minute playlist. At least it was better for me. And I think that's why I ended up enjoying that so much, because the music was great and you could get lost in the music. And I also started learning it, each song is going to be anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes. So I need to listen to however many songs before I look at the clock, kind of thing. So the music part of that was really enjoyable for me.
And what was your step height?
12 inches at home. At the gym, I had one that was higher, but could not sustain that as long. But the 12 inches at home worked great. And I think all your videos on that were so helpful because you could vary what you're doing. You're not just stepping up and down. You're changing the angles. You're changing whether you're walking over or not, or walking down, or adding a little jump. And so all of those videos were really helpful to me in making it so enjoyable.
Yeah, the girl in that video is my friend Leslie. I wish if she ever watches, hi Leslie.
Great job, Leslie.
She's great. Okay. All right. That's helpful. I think some of the listeners that'll make them curious. Like, what is this step ups thing? So I'm glad you shared that. Okay. Now we're going to transition to the mountain. Okay. And kind of tie the training together with the mountain. So Ellen, you spent a lot of time doing step ups, treadmill climbing, and Stairmaster. Was there a section of the mountain where that training really paid off?
So many times, especially I'd say on the descents. Those exercises plus the balance exercises you had us do, I felt so much more confident going down, and certainly using trekking poles really helped as well. But I think just making sure to engage my core, trusting that my legs were strong enough to sustain me going down, I think that really helped. And then also on the ascents, I think the lunges and all of the training that we did, and just reminding myself again to engage my core, but to step all the way up and kind of straighten my leg so that my muscle, kind of my skeletal structure, was taking some of the impact and it wasn't on my muscles. But all of the training, I was so grateful so many times, Marcus, just for your help and all of those exercises that we did.
Every day, I have to say. Because every day the terrain was different, the grade was different. We weren't doing the same height step every day. So I found the lunges and the weighted lunges gave me a lot of confidence, on as well as the treadmill and the step ups and those types of things. But I did learn something, and Ellen laughed at me. The first couple of days I was trying to find the most efficient route on the trail. So I might take a taller step up over a tree root or a rock. And I saw other people going another way, and they were taking smaller steps, but it seemed to be less efficient. And they were, I thought, going longer, more miles. I wanted to get the least number of miles. But after 2 days, I realized the small steps really were the right thing to do. I was confident enough to take the tall steps, but in the end, it's taking more out of your body over the long run. And it was about, maintaining your strength and your energy, preserving your energy. And it took me a couple of days to figure that out, which again, I think I would have done what they were doing originally, but I had confidence because of your training program to take a 16-inch step regularly or whatever. And that wasn't maybe the smartest move on the trail.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that. Listeners, take heed of that.
Yes.
Was there a moment on the mountain when you suddenly thought, oh, this is exactly like one of our training workouts?
I don't think there was a moment that anything was exactly the same. It was always so different. The one thing I really relied on was our last training hike and that steep descent, knowing that we had at least experienced a 40% grade. It didn't make it any easier. But I think, again, my advice would be for people to get out and hike as much as they can. The training program is fantastic. It gives you confidence to go out there, but nothing replaces the experience of actually hiking and being on a trail.
Yep.
Well, I need to throw a caveat in there.
Okay.
A lot of people can't hike. So,
And we could. You're right.
yes. So it is what it is, right? Like anybody listening, just understand if you have hiking available, utilize it and incorporate it. But I would say most of my Kili clients actually don't have access to hiking. So if you don't have access to hiking, that's where you really need to focus on your lunge and your balance progression.
Absolutely. Particularly because, especially if you don't have access to hike and experience uneven terrain, I think, as I said, the balance exercises help so much on the downhill and on, I think it was the Bronco Wall day, Catherine, where from our camp, the Bronco Wall, you have to ascend 250 meters, so about 800 feet up. And from a distance, it looks like it's just a kind of sheer rock face. It was a morning hike, I think. And we had to do some rock scrambling. And, the guides were amazing, saying, put your foot here, give me your hand, I'll pull you up. But the balance exercises and also just the strength that I think that we had built up in our legs in particular helped us so much on that day.
And Marcus, I have to agree with you. With your training program can replace hiking. It's just that I believe an experience gives you comfort out on a trail. But because every hike we did was so different, that didn't help us as much as your training program when we were out on Kili. It's the strength, it's the lunges, it's all of that, the balance work, as Ellen said, and breath work that we did with those things. I think that all prepared us for the actual trek as well as we could be.
Yeah. And like you said, if you have hiking, definitely incorporate it. It's distance and elevation gain.
Yeah.
And if you can get hiking in there to achieve those weekly goals, then go for it. And you guys remember the guardrails, the true elevation gain versus, now I'm calling it mechanical elevation gain. But so just for the listener, and a lot of people who've listened to a lot of the podcasts will recall, the true elevation gain is the hikes and the walks, the step ups. and the stairs, and hill repeats, which aren't specified on your chart. And then the mechanical elevation gain is the treadmill and the stair climbing machines. All right. So you guys logged a ton of elevation gain before the trip. So when you were climbing long stretches on Kilimanjaro, did you ever think back to those training sessions, Ellen?
Yeah, I mean, mostly just with great gratitude that I had done them, and that, I think Katherine was the one who reached out to you initially, and I know that Thomson recommends working with you, and so mostly I thought, thank God I spent all those months training.
Each night I got back or when we were back in our tent, whether it was after tea or before dinner or after dinner, you were on my gratitude list and for the training program, because I was grateful. As Ellen said, gratitude was a huge part of what you did for us, and it gave us confidence to go out there. And each day, I was glad to have done it. And before I even started each day, we said, okay, well, I've done the training. It's just up to how my body actually acclimates to the altitude is an unknown, but I've had real confidence that I've done most everything I could with my body through your program.
What gear decisions turned out to matter the most?
Ooh, good question. I was definitely glad I followed Thomson's packing list. What gear decisions were most important? Yeah, I really glad I followed their list. Day pack. I was really glad, Marcus, you recommended. Katherine and I were not going to take like water bladders with us. We're like, oh no, we're good. We've got Nalgene. And you're like, I don't know. I really think you need the water bladders. I was so glad that we listened to you and we each got one. And even on days where, like the summit day where I basically couldn't breathe, it was nice to have that bladder just to like moisten my mouth and just take little sips from. So that was great. And I don't remember if Thomson recommends it, but I was really glad you did. And actually some of the other kind of gear things, I don't know if this fits, but are things that I had heard recommended on some of your other podcasts. Someone recommended bringing a clothesline, which was amazing to have because it rained a little bit on a couple days, and just be able to hang up our gear when we got back made a difference. Someone else I think recommended bringing chocolate to, like, if you're cold at night, it kind of warms you up. Nice just to have a treat too. I ended up bringing carabiners, which I was glad again for hanging stuff in my tent. A nail brush that I was glad I brought, but my nails were perpetually disgusting. Everything is just so dusty, but it was nice to try to clean my nails. So yeah, those are kind of the things that I was glad I brought in terms of gear, not in terms of like jackets or whatnot, but kind of more little things.
Yeah, I'd say related to the little things, I do think we ought to talk about the big things because they are important. But the little things is stick sunscreen. I kept in my hydration pack and I use that every day, all day, because the sun is so much stronger than you are prepared for. So I think having that, and then just some treat, like Ellen said, whether it's the chocolate, I brought little packs of dirty chai, just something that you could look forward to. And, the bigger things are a really good pack. Your trekking poles, Ellen, thank goodness to you, Marcus, in your training, we knew how to use the trekking poles. We knew the angle of our arms and where, using the loop as kind of the basket that holds your hand. So all of those things were helpful. And really, really good boots that are broken in. My tip, this is kind of, again, my mind works on slurs, as you know. My tip is weigh your gear. Really weigh it. I mean, we weighed it, and I had an idea. I knew I was fudging a little bit, but I forgot about the weight of the sleeping bag and the sleeping pad and the yak try, all of that would add to it. So you're making these last minute decisions there right before you hit the trail because they won't take your duffel bag higher. It's a rule, the porters can't carry it, and it's a good rule. But I think if you're prepared earlier, you won't throw out things that you really might wish that you had. Or, I just think weighing the pack is more important than I gave it credit for.
So give a little more context. How much are the porters, what are the restrictions there? How much weight will they carry?
I think it depends on the route, but the route we were on, you're restricted to your duffel bag being 33 pounds or 15
including the weight of the duffel itself, not just your gear.
The duffel, that has to be your sleeping bag, your sleeping, like the inflatable mat thing that they give you or that you can rent or have. And then the day pack. Katherine and I both hired personal porters, which was so helpful. And that day pack can't be more than 33 pounds as well.
Is there anything that you packed that you never used?
Well, I didn't use them because I had to take them out because I was overweight. That's a good question, Ellen. Did you have anything you didn't use?
I'm trying to think. Thankfully,
use your
medications. Some of the medications I brought.
Oh,
thank
good
God.
point.
Like, I thankfully didn't need the the medication for diarrhea. So, yeah, mostly it's medications that I didn't use.
Okay.
I've rented gear that like a really heavyweight jacket that I didn't need, but we had extraordinarily good weather. So I'm glad that I had it in case the weather changed. We did have a little bit of everything. We had rain, we had hail, we had snow, but we did not have any terribly, terribly cold days, which was helpful. And layering up was enough with what we owned. But again, I'm glad I rented it, but I did not wear one jacket at least, maybe two.
Ellen, what was your relationship like with the guides during the trek?
Oh my God. I could spend an hour talking about the guides. Seriously. They were so amazing, especially our lead guide, George Kachanta. I wrote his name down just to make sure I got it correct. They were extraordinary. They are so intuitive. They know exactly what you need. It's like they are reading your mind. They know how you feel. They know what to say and when to say it. One of the guides, Peter, was one of the assistant guides. He was about 6 inches behind me on some of the descents. I don't know if I looked like I was going to fall, but he was there in case I even slipped. And on the summit,
he was there because he called you Piscicali.
Yeah, which
beautiful, beautiful in Swahili.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why. So I stepped here behind me, and then our lead guide George really was so intuitive, and I think, as I said, knew what to say to each of us when we needed encouragement, when we needed a push, a gentle push, a more aggressive push, and on the summit day, I was lagging at the kind of the back of the line going up, and he said, "Ellen, I want you up front with me." And I said, "No," sort of stubborn. I was like, "Well, I want to be in the back because I want to go at my own pace." And so we stopped and took a water break, and he came back to talk to me, and he said, "I'm the boss." And he said it in a very gentle way. And he said, "I really want you up front because it'll help me set the pace to make sure all of you can kind of sustain this pace." And he said, "I'm asking you to trust me, and I'm asking you to trust yourself." And honestly, that talk, that encouragement made all the difference. I apologize for being stubborn and sassy. And it really, he made all the difference for me.
That's cool.
The guides are extraordinary, and watching them give us each what we needed at different times, balance out different personalities, different fitness levels. George is truly a gifted leader, and I would follow George anywhere because I think he has the right skill set to help get you where you're going. And the one that I'll never forget on summit day, and Ellen, I think you were with George at that point in time, but we were all struggling a little bit. We'd been climbing a while. I don't remember how many hours. It was still dark. And George started singing and just started gently singing. And then the porters behind us at the end of the line started singing. And it was just this heartwarming encouragement that we all got, knowing we weren't alone. And I think the community that we had together, not only with the guides, but with our fellow trekkers, and wanting each person to succeed. And we wanted to do it together. There were some incredibly fit people in our group, and they could have gone way ahead, but they wanted to be part of our group and they wanted to do this together. And it was powerful. And I think without George's leadership, that could have been different. And I just can't, like Ellen, I can't say enough wonderful things about George. And the other two guides, Peter and Pablo, were wonderful.
And when you finally reached the summit, what did that moment feel like?
You want to go, Catherine?
Ellen, I guess, I think for me, Marcus, I have to be straightforward here. The summit was never my ultimate goal. You know, it was the training. It was the journey. So I was thrilled to be at the summit. But what was most heartwarming there was the other people, like my dear friend Ellen, who I knew had struggled that day, and she made it. And I was just so inspired by her and the others there that, I'm shaking now thinking about it, how just wonderful it was to see people get there as a group, but really dig in to get there. It was wonderful at the top. We did celebrate, but it was really about the group together and those individuals that struggled, and we were there together.
What did that moment feel like to you?
Surprise. I think I'm 55 years old. I thought I knew myself well enough that I no longer need to surprise myself. I was surprised. Catherine, thank you for saying that, like, that for you, getting to the summit was not the goal. I think that's the first time you've shared that. And I agree. I mean, and it's not as though, as much as I was struggling to breathe, it's not as though I didn't equate stopping with giving up, because I am so far exceeded any goal I had or goals I didn't even have for myself. I never thought I would climb Kilimanjaro. I never thought I'd climb really any mountain. I mean, I prefer seeing mountains from an airplane and looking down on them. I'm like, that's pretty. I don't want to climb them. So this was so beyond anything I had imagined for myself that mostly I felt surprise and gratitude. And I was tired. So when we got up there, I sat down for a bit. But the goal for me really wasn't the summit. It was trying. It was training. It was pushing myself to try something that scared me, that I had never done, that my dear friend trusted me enough and had enough confidence in me to ask me to do with her. So, a few times on that summit day, I even thought, well, maybe I'll stop at Stella Point, which is, it's at 18,000 and something. I can't remember how far down from the summit. And I didn't see it as not succeeding, because I felt like I had already succeeded. The highest I'd ever been was 15,500 feet in Nepal 30 years ago, as you mentioned, Marcus. So I was like, I've already succeeded. So I think that was part of the surprise when I got to the summit, and I also felt so like a different part of myself was doing this, a part of myself that I don't think I knew I had in me. That's why my first emotion really was surprise.
Catherine, what did you learn about yourself through this experience?
I wanted to go back to, again, our amazing Thomson team, because we summited, we had a joyful experience. We were tired, but we were surprised, like Ellen maybe, but just just happy to be together. And we began our descent and we got down to about 18,000 feet. So we were still really high. We were greeted by some of the porters from our camp that brought us lunch on plates. So they had climbed from base camp to 18,000 feet purely to be part of our summit day. And it was such a surprise. And that they were there experiencing our emotions with us. So we had our main guides, but we had a lot of the other porters there as well. And they wanted to all be in pictures with us and different things like that. So we were blessed with a really remarkable group of trekkers and porters and guides. The whole team was the reason the trip was so good. It wasn't any one thing, but it was all of those together.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to maybe share another anecdote or two. It seems like you guys are really kind of taken back to the trip. Is there anything else that you guys want to share?
How much time do you have?
Just whatever you want to share that's on your mind or on your heart or whatever.
I'll jump. Two things come to mind, Ellen. So please, I'm giving you time to think because she's the thinker in the group. So I just kind of, it's out there. Two things, and they're totally different. One is what I learned about myself, which I think you were going to ask me earlier, was that I needed more community than I realized in my daily life, because I realized how powerful this community was for me during this adventure. And, I live alone, I work alone, and I do a lot of my workouts alone. I do have community, but I'm not intentionally engaging outside of certain things. And so I have been making an effort since getting home to reestablish community, because I realize how important that is. We can't do these things alone. I mean, Ellen and I are self-sufficient. We don't need a lot of pushing. We're going to do what we're responsible for. But that's what I came away with that I'm translating to regular life. One other thing that I'm going to translate to regular life is I learned early on in this trek, because of the altitude, you really can't do two things at once. And we, in our life here, we're texting, we're talking, and you see, Marcus, how distracted I am. I get distracted by a lot. But there, if you were hiking and someone said, look at this tree or look at that bird, and you didn't stop, you would lose your balance. So it was, and that lesson was reinforced every day in all kinds of ways, that be present, just focus on what you're doing. And if there's something else, stop the one thing you're doing and then look at that. So those are probably the two things that pop into my mind now that I'm bringing back to my regular life that were powerful lessons.
Yeah, to add on to that, Katherine, thank you for talking about that. I think in terms of being present, I think because the trek was physically difficult, it forced me to be present, because I was so focused on where I was putting my foot, who was in front of me, but also where I was. And I think Peter, one of the assistant guides in particular, was so helpful. Every time I asked a question, I had so many questions about what's that tree, what's that plant, what's that bird. Peter would answer all of them. And I asked him about the same flower several times, and he kept telling me the name of it. And of course, I still can't remember. But it helped me be present because, as I would stop and kind of look around to really take in where we were. And he was so helpful teaching me about what I was seeing and where we were and flora and the fauna and all of it. And I think George, also all the guides, but George in particular, I think was really good about expecting us to be present, in that he was only giving us the information we needed when we needed it.
Good point.
And instead of worrying about or wondering about what are we doing 2 days from now, or when will we get to camp, or when will we get to tea, George would kind of redirect if any of us asked that question. And he's like, we'll get there. And so it was very freeing in a way to just follow someone that was so capable and that we trusted, because I'm like, well, however long it's going to take for us to get to camp, we'll get there. And so I never worried about how much more elevation we had to get, how many more hours we were trekking, because I knew we would get there. I knew we'd be safe. And it was both very freeing and really helped me be present.
Okay. If someone listening right now is thinking about Kilimanjaro, but feels unsure, what would you tell them?
I would say yes. Say yes to keep your heart and your mind open to new experiences. And if this experience is calling you, say yes to it, but go as prepared as you can. And it's not a plug for you, Marcus, but I do think I did not have to worry about my physical fitness. I worried about these other things, but because I went in knowing I had done the training, I was confident in my body. I knew there were a lot of other things that could go wrong, but I was ready physically for this. And I'd say any type of travel or new thing is going to come back to you tenfold in how it will change you. And so I'd say yes to Kilimanjaro. I'm not sure Ellen would say this today, but she might. She'd go back with me, maybe. Just a shorter, not 9 days in a maybe. But Marcus, we are thinking about a hike in Norway or something like that. So I just want you to know that. But it was just wonderful. So I'd say yes to the experience.
Yeah, Ellen, same question. If someone listening right now is thinking about Kilimanjaro but feels unsure, what would you tell them?
I would tell them if I can do it, just about anyone can do it. I am someone who really like soft sheets, nice beds, spas, not camping. And things that are kind of frictionless. And so I chose to take on this huge challenge, and I'm so grateful that I did. And really that's the presiding emotion I think I feel is gratitude. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about it, who is on the fence, certainly they can reach out to us and ask questions. But my attitude with things is why not? Why not just try? And because otherwise you're asking what if? And I don't want to go through my life asking what if. I like approaching things with an attitude of why not?
Well, you're a writer. I think you think that's a good place to stop. That was perfect.
I've got a few more things that I want to add.
Yeah.
If not, that's okay.
Yeah, no, I love it. Go for it.
So just in terms of like gratitude to you. And I know we keep saying this, Marcus, but really you made a huge difference. Katherine and I both worked with trainers locally. They were a great help. Thomson Treks was an incredible team, from the team in Boston that we talked to the team in Tanzania. We also really lucked out with the other trekkers in our group. And certainly that's nothing you can control, but they were so kind and so supportive. We were all sharing things. We were, if someone was sick, we were sharing medicine or snacks or whatever it was. And then two other things. One, things I wish I had brought. Another long sleeve t-shirt, like a lightweight, because it is so sunny and I'm so pale that I wish I brought a lightweight long sleeve t-shirt. I wish I had brought sun protection gloves. Someone in our group had sun protection gloves. I'd never even heard of them. My wrist got really burned the first day. I really wish I had had gloves. I wish I had brought body warmers or shoe warmers just for the night to kind of just put on your body. The porters were great about filling up a water bottle with hot water if we wanted to put that and have that in our sleeping bag, which was great. But I wish I'd had kind of those travel.
Only for Pissy Callie.
Yes, only for me. And then the other thing I wish I brought is either hard candies or chewing gum. Particularly on the summit day, on the ascents were tough for me. And I was breathing through my mouth a lot and my mouth got so dry. And one of the other gals in our group had hard candies and she gave Katherine and me each one. And it just made all the difference. I really wish I brought those. And then one thing in terms of training, I wish that I had pushed myself more in terms of like my cardiovascular preparation and fitness, and even done more kind of aerobic prep to help with the ascents. I think for Katherine, and certainly you can tell me if this isn't correct, Katherine, I think because you do more endurance stuff and swimming and cardio than I do, I think the ascents were easier for you in some ways. And I was struggling a bit just in terms of my like cardiovascular endurance. And so I really wish I had pushed myself more on like the treadmill and, even running up the stairs and things like that. So I would say to, anyone listening, don't think you can over prepare, and just make sure you have kind of good cardiovascular strength as well as muscular strength.
And Marcus, excuse me for adding one more PS to Ellen's list, but both you and Ellen recommended Rolfing to me towards the end of the training program. And Marcus, you'll remember I have a lot of trouble with balance. Balance was the hardest part of the training program for me. And so I began doing the Rolfing and realizing how out of aligned my body was, which is one reason balance is a challenge for me. But the hidden benefit in Rolfing for me was the breath work, because I don't do yoga or Pilates and that type of thing. So having the breath work and those tools to use on tough days, ascent days particularly, and making sure your chest is open, your rib cage is open, and you're deep breathing, because we all tend to get shallow the more tired we are. So I think that breath work was a real hidden jewel in the recommendation you all gave to me with the Rolfing. I use that training every day as well during the trek.
All right. Has everybody cleared their brains with aspirational, practical information?
I've got one more thing I want to add too, just in terms of like, if you're thinking about, for people listening to your podcast and thinking about doing this trek, especially for women. So our group was with 7 people, 6 women and 1 man. And we were our ages range from 55 to 66. And I think, so Katherine and I were the bookends. I think one of my takeaways from this trip is how physically empowered I feel and how strong I feel, and a kind of a mind shift, even in terms around like all of the meals, like the food that we had on the trip was so good and so nutritious, and thinking about food as fuel, versus something that is earned. I think particularly for women to be able to look at an opportunity like this trip as a way to feel physically empowered, especially, I think, middle-aged women at a time when perhaps we feel disempowered or we feel like we're losing something. This is an opportunity to really gain so much. Now I'm done.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
That was all such good information.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was amazing. Great stuff. You just wait till it comes out. That concludes this episode of the Hike Strong podcast. I'm committed to keeping all of the episodes for free. All I ask is that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. My goal is to build a vast community of hikers with the confidence to crush any local or global trail. I hope you will join me in this endeavor. So until next time, train, hike, repeat, and as always, I'm here to support you every step of the way.
Hey, Marcus, it's separate than the podcast, and you can edit this out. I would be curious to hear from you. You said your notes reflected our differences. I'd love to know, what did you mean by that? And was that Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just curious.
So
What
that is
that-
the one part we didn't get to, because literally we've
Okay.
done, I mean, I literally have I copied and pasted like each week and what week it was, what my notes were, what your emails were. I literally have all of that. And I guess just going, I mean, again, the activities, when you, okay, let's go back a second. So Ellen, you bring up something that is a distinction between the training, right? I think that Katherine got a lot of her, let's say, just cardiovascular training with the swimming.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a big difference there. When we talked about also kind of the mindset too, not mindset, but how you guys were processing the physicality of it, the volume of the training. I really liked the difference. So Katherine processed it more like an athlete in training. Okay. And Ellen, you processed it more like it felt like a new venture for you.
Absolutely.
And so it was we talked a lot about the training, kind of there was mental stuff that we worked through. And so there was a disparity there, right? And so that was interesting. I don't know. Again, I was going to literally go through it. It just would be, there's just so much information here. We could do this for another hour where I say, okay, Ellen, here's what we talked about in week 1.
Yeah.
And Katherine, here's what we talked about in week 2. What questions do you have? I mean, is there anything in particular that you can think of that you want me to comment on? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not surprised that I tried to approach a physical endeavor through my brain, because that's how I always approach things, and that was part of the appeal and the challenge of this training and this trek, is because I have spent my entire life pretty much, orienting to things with my brain, certainly primarily and maybe only through my brain. So that's how I was trying to make sense of this extreme physical challenge. And I hadn't, done some of the things. I've never done endurance things like Katherine has. So it was very new for me.
And you hit your goals. I mean, it was really cool to see both of you hit your goals, but thinking about it psychologically different. And so let me see if I can articulate that better. The determination with both of you was equal, because you both were determined to hit your goals. Okay. And for Katherine, it was a little bit more, how could I put it? It was a little bit more like it was part of your life. Like, this is what you do, right? And for Ellen, it was different. It's like, I'm not used to this, but I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And even when you started to get like burnt out toward the end there, just your determination didn't change. And so you leveraged my influence more.
Mm-hmm.
We like worked together more to get you to some of those points. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction between. I was trying to figure out what you meant by your comment, so this has been a helpful discussion. Ellen is much more cerebral, much more of a thinker and a planner, and she is a perfectionist. I mean, and and I am not. And I do a lot of things by instinct and joy. And, I have the joy of the training because it really is important for my soul and my mental outlook. So I just think that's why I knew Ellen was going to summit all along. I know the determination she has, and I never doubted that. But to watch her work through that, particularly that last summit day, was just so inspiring. And so I think you hit on our differences, and not everybody sees that in us. I think they think we're more similar in some ways than we are. So I think we were good travel partners too.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that contrast is what makes, is what makes you two traveling together enjoyable, certainly successful and rich with, whatever contrast brings out in human interaction, you guys get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You think about things and approach things
Mm-hmm.
differently.
When we go hiking in Norway, will you have us prepare?
100%. But now you know the system. You won't need as much from me. Now you know the system. So what I'll do is I'll put together the tracking chart for you. We'll just have fewer sessions. You guys won't need it. You won't. So it'll be fun for me to also see how you guys take that information and now can just go do it. Now that you've been through this process, you guys can do anything. It's numbers. Like you said, it's math.
It is math.
It's math. I give you the numbers and you just put your stuff in the chart. And by then the app's going to be out.
Oh, good. Well, you make it so easy.
That's what I was going to ask you.
You've got all the calculators on your website. So it's not as though it's difficult. It's just, again, kind of a learning curve, but you make things very easy.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we are done. That was amazing. That was so much fun. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for both of you giving me the opportunity to work with you guys. Yeah, really appreciate you trusting me in these moments. And it was so important for you both to summit. And I didn't have any doubt. And I'm glad you trusted me along the way. I'm really grateful. Appreciate it.
You're an important and critical part of our success.
Yes.
All right.
Agree.
Well, super.
I'm grateful for you.
All right. Well, we're going to bid our farewells, but we will be back together again for sure. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Marcus.
All right. We'll stay in touch.
Marcus.
Thank you.
Thanks for
All right.
everything. Yeah. Stay in touch. Bye.
Good to see you both. Okay. Bye.